To assess the condition of movement of the muscles, you need to inspect the client's physical appearance for any asymmetry of the body. And the normal findings is muscles are fully developed and symmetry in all sizes. And the abnormal findings is that muscles atrophy may be seen in a disease of a lower neurons of muscle disorders. To evaluate the gait and balance, you need to ask your clients to walk naturally across the room and note for any posture, freedom of movement, symmetry and rhythm, and with balance. So let the client walk. Can you please walk naturally? The normal findings is that gait is steady and opposite arm swings. The abnormal findings is that uneven or unsteady gait is noted. To perform heel-to-toe fashion, you need to ask the clients to walk next to the heels and then to the toes. Our responsibility as an examiner is to keep the client safe, and we also need to stand close to our client in case if the client loses the balance. So the normal findings is that clients maintains balance with the tandem walking and walks on heels, and the abnormal findings is that the clients walk uncoordinated or unsteady. To perform the Romberg test, you need to ask the client to stand erect with arms on the side and then feet together. Note any unsteadiness or swaying of the clients, and then in the same body position, ask the clients to close the eyes for 20 seconds and note any swaying. So can you please now feet together? Close your eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay. The normal findings is that the client stand erect with minimal swaying and with eyes closed together, and then the abnormal findings is that swaying and moving of feet to prevent fall, and can be seen with unsteadiness, and can be also seen with the disease in the posterior columns or the vestibular dysfunction of cerebral disorder. The next is you need to ask the client to stand on one foot and to bend the knee of the leg, and then the client is standing on, and then ask the client to hop on the floor and repeat on the other foot. Can you please bend your knee now, and then hop, and then the other one. Okay. Normal findings is that bends knee while standing on one foot and hops on each foot without balance, and then the abnormal findings is that inability to stand or hop on one foot. To assess the coordination, demonstrate the fingers to nose test to assess the accuracy of the movements, and then you need to ask your clients to extend and hold arms out of the side with eyes closed, and you need to ask the clients to touch the tip of the nose, and then using your index finger and repeat the procedure 3 times. Close your eyes now. 1, 2, 3. The normal findings is that the client touches the nose with smooth, accurate movements and with little hesitation. And then the abnormal findings is that uncoordinated or jerky movements. To assess the rapid alternating movements, have the client sit down first and ask the clients to touch each finger of the speed as the client progresses and repeats with the other side. So, can you do this, ma'am? Okay, to the other side. Okay. The normal findings is that the client touches each finger with the thumb, and the abnormal findings is that inability to perform rapid alternating movements may be seen with cerebellar, upper or motor neutron weakness. The next is to ask the clients to put the palm of both hands down on both legs, and then turn the palms up, and then turn the palms down again, and then ask the clients to increase its speed. Can you do this now? And then higher, ma'am. A bit faster. The normal findings is that the clients rapidly turns the palm up and down, and then the abnormal findings is uncoordinated movements or tremors. The next is to perform the heel to shin test. Ask the client to lie down and then slide the heel of the other right foot and down to the left shin, and then repeat the procedure to the other side of the foot. Slide. And then the normal findings is that the client is able to run each heel smoothly down each shin. And then the abnormal findings is deviation of heel to one side or the other may be seen in cerebellar disease. To test the light touch sensation, use a whisk cotton to touch the client and ask the client to where they feel it. And don't forget to scatter all over the distal and proximal parts of the extremity and to the trunk. So sir, can you please close your eyes? And then can you tell me
For
the
normal
sensations
findings,
that you
no
feel?
rapid contraction or oscillations of the upper or illicit leg.
Okay.
For abnormal findings,
The normal findings is that the client correctly differentiates between the dull and the sharp or the soft, and then the abnormal findings is the clients cannot identify or differentiate the dull and the sharp sensation. To test the pain sensation, you need to use any sharp materials and the blunt materials. So sir, can you please close your eyes again and tell me if it's sharp or if it's blunt?
It's sharp
Sharp.
and it is blunt.
Okay. The normal findings is that the clients correctly differentiate the dull and the sharp, and the abnormal findings is there is a hyperesthesia or it is the decrease of sensitivity to touch. To test the temperature sensation, use any materials that has a hot or cold water, and then let the client identify. Yes, close your eyes, sir, and kindly identify if it's hot or cold.
So this one is hot and this one is
Okay, thank you. The normal findings is that client correctly identifies the hot and the cold water, and then the abnormal findings is the client cannot identify the hot or cold water. To test the vibratory sensation, strike the tuning fork on the heel of the hand and hold the base of the distal radius and the forefinger and the medial malleolus and the tip of the great toe.
Watch the hips
Can
and
you
knees
feel
in
any
reaction to the
vibrations?
maneuver.
How about that? Okay. How about this, sir? Okay. So the normal findings is that the client correctly identifies the sensation or feel the vibrations, and the abnormal findings is there is inability to sense the vibration. To test the sensitivity position, ask the clients to close the eyes and then hold the client's toe or finger, and then move the finger on the lateral and move it upward, downward, and ask the clients to tell their direction upon the movement.
For normal
So can you
findings,
close
no
your eyes,
pain
sir?
is felt.
And
From
then,
normal finding,
can
pain
you
and
tell me, sir, what
increased
it moves?
resistance to
Right side,
activity
right
are
side,
positive of
left
burning
side,
signs.
downward, and upward.
Okay, and the normal findings is client directly identifies the direction of the movements, and the abnormal findings is that inability to identify the direction of the movements. To assess the tactile discrimination, remember that the clients should close their eyes to test the stereognosis, which is to place a familiar object and let the client identify the objects that they are holding. So, can you please close your eyes, sir? And then hold the object. And can you tell me what is
Next
the object?
assessment is sensory system.
Coin,
Okay.
Assess light touch.
And the normal findings is that clients correctly identifies the object, and the abnormal findings is the client cannot identify the object.
Sharp sensation.
To test the point localization, briefly touch the client and ask the client to identify where it is being touched. So kindly close your eyes, sir. And can you tell me where the area they touch?
Clients report anesthesia.
arm,
Which
right
arm?
side.
Pain
Okay.
sensation. You still
And
not a sharp
the
pain.
normal findings is the client correctly identifies the area that has been touched, and then the abnormal findings is the inability to identify the area being touched. To test the graphesthesia, use a blunt instrument to write a number, any number, and then on the palm of the client, and then ask the client to identify the number what is being written. Can you please close your eyes, sir? And then tell me what is the number or the letter I am going to write on the palm of your hands.
Letter A,
Okay. And the normal findings is clients correctly identify the written letters or number, and then the abnormal findings is inability to identify the written letters or number. Test the 2-point discrimination. Ask the client to identify the numbers of the points being touched with the EKG calipers. Since we don't have any EKG calipers, I will be using a 2 ball pens as an alternative tool. And place it on the client's hand with closed eyes. And you please close your eyes, sir. And then tell me how many objects do you feel upon being touched.
Hold on the base of the distal
Can you-
radius, forefinger tip, medial malleolus, and last the tip of the great toe.
How many objects, sir?
2,
2. How about that, sir?
1, 2.
So, the normal findings is that the client can identify the 2 points, and then the abnormal findings is inability to correctly identify objects. And if the client only identify the one object being touched, use a ruler or any material, you can measure the distance of the EKG calipers. To test the extension, simultaneously touch the clients in the same area of the both sides of the body, and then ask the clients to identify the area where it is being touched. So can you please close your eyes, sir? And can you tell me the area being touched?
On the arm.
How about this, sir?
On the shoulder.
Okay. So the normal findings is that the clients correctly identify the points being touched, and then the abnormal findings is clients cannot identify the area being touched. To test the bicep reflex, ask the client to partially bend the arm at the elbow with the palm up. Place your thumb over the bicep tendon and strike your thumb with the pointed side of the reflex hammer. And repeat the maneuver at the other side of the hand. So the normal findings is elbow flexes and contraction of the bicep muscle is seen and felt. And the abnormal findings is that there is no response and exaggeration, response, or movement. The brachioradialis reflex, ask the client to flex the elbow within palm down and hand resting on the abdomen or lap. Use the flat side of the reflex hammer to tap the tendon at the radius, above the wrist. So the normal findings is the flexion and supination of the forearm. The abnormal findings is there is no response or exaggeration movement. The next is to test the tricep reflex. Ask the client to hang the arm freely while you support it with your non-dominant hand with the elbow flex. Use the flat side of the reflex hammer to tap the tendon above the olecranon process. So the normal findings is elbow extends and tricep contracts ranges from 1 to 3. The abnormal findings is there is no response or exaggeration movements. To assess the patellar reflex, ask the client to let both legs hang freely of the side of the table or the examination table, and using the flat side of the reflex hammer, tap the patellar tendon which is located below the patella, and repeat the maneuver to the other side of the feet. The normal findings is knee extends, quadriceps muscle contracts. And the abnormal findings is no response or exaggeration movement. To test the Achilles reflex with the legs, the client's legs hanging freely, dorsiflex the foot, and then tap the Achilles tendon with the flat side of the reflex hammer, and repeat the procedure to the other side of the foot. The normal findings is there is normal response in the plantar flexion of the foot, and the abnormal findings is there is no response or exaggeration movement occurs. To test the ankle clunus, place one hand under the knee to support the leg, and then briskly dorsiflex the foot towards the client head, and repeat the procedure to the other foot.
and tell me if you feel dull or sharp. Dull.
The normal findings is there is no rapid contraction or oscillation of the ankle. And the abnormal findings is repeated or rapid contractions or oscillations of the ankle. To assess the plantar reflex, with the end of the reflex hammer or tongue blade, stroke the lateral aspect of the sole of the heel to the ball of the feet, and then repeat the maneuver to the other side. The normal findings is there is a flexion of course of the toes. The abnormal findings is the toes will fan for a abnormal response, which is positive for the Babinski response. To test the abdominal reflex, slightly stroke the abdomen of each side, above and below the umbilicus, and then this evaluates the function of the levels of the T9, T8, and T10. The normal findings is the abdominal muscle contract, and then the abnormal findings is there is a absence of the superficial reflexes with lower or upper motor neurons lesions. If you suspect the client that has meningeal irritation, you need to assess the neck for mobility, and then first you have to make sure that there is no injury of the client, and then with the client in a supine position, place your hands behind the patient's head, and then flex the neck forward until the chin touches the chest if possible. So ma'am, do you experience any injuries in your body? So I'm going to lift your head. The normal findings is neck is supple and client can easily bend the head and the neck forward. The abnormal findings is pain in the neck and resistance to flexion arise. To test for the Brudzinski sign, as you flex the neck, watch the hip and the knees of the client as you do the maneuver.
Use a blunt instrument to write a number such as 1, 3, or 5 on the palm of the client and ask the client to identify what.
So the normal findings is the hips and the knees remains relaxed and motionless. The abnormal findings is pain and flexion of the hips and the knees are positive. To test for the Koenig slide, flex the client's leg at both the hip and the knee and straighten up the knee.
So after assessing the sensory system, we are now going to assess the reflex.
The normal findings is pain and increase in resistance to extending the knee are positive. The abnormal findings is there is a pain when the knees is being extended.